Richard Hammond is a presenter and media personality that has played the game of life right to the limit and came out on top by the skin of his teeth on multiple occasions.
In my mind, I'd always wondered, and I think I always do, always. When am I going to die? Oh, it's now.
Richard Hammond!
Richard Hammond was involved in a serious crash.
So how did this iconic Top Gear presenter escape the clutches of certain death and become a legendary meme? Hello guys, I'm the Fat Memer. I document memes and internet stories, and today we're going to be discussing the story of Richard Hammond and how his presenting career almost killed him. Richard was born on the 19th of December 1969 in Solihull near Birmingham to his car-obsessed family where his grandfather was a coach builder for Jensen Motors. In the mid-1980s, Richard moved with his family to Ripon in North Yorkshire, where he attended Ripon Grammar School, where he would then go on to attend Harrogate College of Art. It was also around this time when he had his first job shoveling grit into a water filtration plant. After graduating from art school in 1988, Hammond worked for several BBC radio stations. While presenting the afternoon programme at Radio Lancaster, one of his regular guests included motoring journalist Zog Zegler, who would review Car of the Week by being interviewed by Hammond over the phone. The two of them became good friends, and Zegler encouraged Hammond to enter the motoring reviews world on TV. So he went and pursued a career in the TV space, starting out on satellite TV, before at the age of 33 auditioning for a small show that was getting revamped, called Top Gear. As they say, the rest is history. However, throughout Hammond's career in life, there has always been one very consistent theme. He crashes vehicles, like a lot of them, which is probably natural if you're making a car program with explosions and car crashes, but he just always seems to crash more than anyone else. It became so apparent that he became a meme and inside joke on Top Gear. But there is always a price to pay with accidents. You're never going to come out completely fine 100% of the time. Richard got his first taste of finding this out during the filming of the Man with the Van episode in July 2006. During the episode, Richard was driving a Hiace van, in which it sees him attempting a Scandinavian flick, but subsequently leads to the van being rolled over on its side. The Scandi flick was staged and took over 10 times to pull off. However, the stage crash left Hammond with severe whiplash, which still plagues him to this day. On the 20th of September 2006, Hammond was filming an episode for the 9th season of Top Gear. The recording was taking place at the former RAF Evlington Air Base near York. The filming day would see him testing a jet-propelled car called the Vampire, which to this day is still the fastest recorded vehicle in Britain with a speed of more than 300 miles per hour. Hammond successfully completed 6 runs of the runway, however the production needed more footage for the episode, so one final run was required. The front tyre exploded mid-run, and the emergency crew quickly arrived at the scene, finding it inverted and partially embedded in the grass. During the intense roll, Hammond's helmet had embedded itself into the ground, flipping the visor up and forcing soil into his mouth and damaging his left eye. Hammond was then freed by hydraulic shears and placed on a backboard. At this point, he was slowly regaining consciousness and stated that he had lower back pain. He was quickly transported by Yorkshire Air Ambulance to the neurological unit of Leeds General Infirmary. Aside from minor bruising to the eye, in the investigation report of the crash, it states that his main injury was due to concussion and shock loading of the brain, that in the short term caused his brain to swell. The injury initially gave cause for serious concern, and Richard Hammond was transferred to the neurological intensive care unit at Leeds Infirmary, where his condition was classed as critical for some time. Fortunately, the brain swelling subsided, and he was well enough to return to Bristol to convalesce 2 weeks later. Over a period of weeks, Richard Hammond suffered from decreasing symptoms of short-term memory and concentration loss. By mid-December, he was fit enough to attend an interview at the Bristol office. Perhaps surprisingly, he retains quite a good recollection of events at Evlington.
The car had skewed right and was going off the road, but it was still doing 290 miles an hour as it started to roll. I'd pulled the lever for the parachute, which was all that mattered to me when I finally, weeks or months later, became aware of what was happening. I needed to know had I done that, because I looked at my children and thought, if I've nearly denied you a father for the rest of your lives because I'm an idiot and I did the wrong thing, I wouldn't forgive myself, but I did do the right thing. So it was never going to stop it. So then it went over. And it rolled, and as it went over, I knew, there's no roof, just a roll bar. I didn't know how fast I was going, but I knew it was fast. And I just thought, well, I'm going to die now.
During his time spent in hospital, Jeremy sent a funny message to Richard's wife every single day for 5 weeks to try and keep her going, which Hammond later stated he thought if everyone found out about it, Clarkson would die of shame and it makes him look soppy. It also turns out that Richard's reactions during the crash was similar to that of a fighter pilot, managing to remember his training, turning into the spin and shutting the engine off despite the main parachute not being deployed. Some people claim that the incident occurred during an attempt to break the British land speed record, but this was actually false, as Top Gear producer Andy Willman vetoed against it due to the risk and complexities of attempting to break the record. The report stated, runs were to be carried out in only one direction, along a preset course on the runway. Vampire's speed was to be recorded using GPS satellite telemetry. The intention was to record the maximum speed, not to measure an average speed over a measured course, and for Hammond to describe how it felt. On the 28th of January 2007, Richard returned to Top Gear with a hero's welcome. Episode 1 of Series 9 is the only episode of Top Gear which is never re-aired in its entirety, due to a personal request made by Richard to never show the crash again. This wouldn't be the last time that Richard escaped death by the skin of his teeth. On the 10th of June 2017, while filming the second series of the Grand Tour in Hamburg, Switzerland, Richard was testing the Rimac Concept 1, which is a £2 million high-performance electric car. He was on his last run up a timed hill climb course and successfully finished. However, shortly after crossing the finish line, the car ran off the road, tumbled down the hill, and caught a light 110 meters from the road. He was quickly airlifted to the hospital, where he was diagnosed with a tibial plateau fracture in his left knee, which required a plate and 10 screws to be surgically inserted. Hammond was conscious throughout the whole event, stating that his only thought going through his mind was, "Oh God, I'm going to die." Jeremy and James both witnessed the crash with their very own eyes, both believing that Hammond was dead, with James recalling a feeling of, quote, blooming white hot ball of pure sickening horror forming in my heart.
It was our last run of the day. Phil asked for another one. We did it. I got to the top and crashed. James, of course, was following up doing his run and arrived. And so both him and Jeremy saw it from different angles. They saw car roll, 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 bounce, 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 bounce. And they thought, well, Hammond's had it. And then, of course, they saw them dragging our body, me, by my arms across the grass, and both thought, oh, the little fella's bought the farm.
Jeremy tweeted on the day of the crash, stating, "It was the biggest crash I've ever seen, and the most frightening, but incredibly, and thankfully, Richard seems to be mostly okay." In 2009, a group of friends calling themselves the Syndicate picked up the Vampire Dragster with an intact chassis but damaged suspension, brakes and steering. Over the course of a 2-year period, they painstakingly rebuilt the Dragster to its former glory. And on the 10th of January 2022, a video was uploaded to the Drive Tribe YouTube channel in which it saw Richard sitting in the car that almost killed him 15 years ago. Although Richard has no intentions to get in any more car crashes, the same couldn't be said for what is left of Top Gear. In December 2022, new Top Gear presenter Freddie Flintoff was involved in a crash that resulted in major facial injuries, which then led to BBC Studios settling with Flintoff for £9 million in damages in October 2023. This could be the final blow to Top Gear, as BBC executives have stated that the show will not be returning for the foreseeable future and has been taken off the air. After the crash, Richard stated in an interview, television makers have to be aware that you're not in some special bubble just because you're making a TV show, and things can and do go wrong. Just like when my tyre blew at that speed, it's going to be bad, but what can you do? Track it back to the person who tapped the rubber? 17 years after the Vampire crash, Richard featured in a video in which he recalls and reflects on what he experienced during his coma.
A long time ago, I was in a coma with a brain injury as a result of a particularly flamboyant crash involving a certain jet-powered dragster. In hospital, intensive care. Things apparently not looking very good, but I didn't know. There was a lot of morphine flowing around my system. I finally woke and I shared with my wife Mindy a dream I'd been having, a really, really, really vivid one, probably partly on account of the morphine. And in my mind, I'd been walking these hills here in the Lake District, overlooking Buttermere. I was having a lovely time. I mean, I didn't really come up to this hill and walk around this tree. I was in a coma in Leeds. But my mind did, and my mind is who I am. I know that very well, having damaged it with a frontal lobe brain injury and spent a long time recovering. And I've taken huge solace from that ever since, because that was my last thought. Certainly at the time. And my last thought took me somewhere I love and somewhere I'm happy. And that last thought, if I had shut down and stopped, would have echoed as far as I was concerned for all of eternity. And I've found immense comfort from it ever since. So I'm not scared of this old tree. I pass it regularly when most months at some point I'll come up here and walk. And every time I pass it, I do feel comforted. I know it's where I'll go.
Not many people can live their dream, let alone letting it almost kill you twice. But Richard has always taken risks with his life and became a meme for his crashes, but became a legend for surviving all of them. Thank you so much for watching this video, it really does mean a lot to me. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment below what you want to see next.